This is the download recap from Sounds Profitable, the most important news from this week and why it matters to people in the business of podcasting. I'm Gavin Gaddis. The download, as usual, is brought to you by Podscribe. You can find out more at podscribe.com. This week, Mattresses and Metrics by Tom Webster. Wondercraft's Oscar Sarander talks about convo mode. YouTube isn't dominating podcasting. Amazon adds private auctions to Prime Video. And Apple's announcements include more for podcasting. Let's get started. While looking at Podscribe's performance benchmarks report for Q2 2025, a particular section stuck out to Tom Webster. Pixel attribution captures 7 times more conversions than post-purchase surveys and 4.6% times more conversions than promo codes. Here's a quote from Tom Webster. Quote, 2 things immediately come to mind here, and they aren't mutually exclusive. 1, more campaigns should be using pixel attribution. And 2, we need to get more ambitious about our data if we are ever going to give podcasting the credit it deserves in driving a transaction. End quote. Tom reflects how he and his wife recently purchased a Sattva mattress. He's sure he'd heard of the brand before he heard a podcast ad for them, and he gets retargeted Sattva ads regularly in the mix of mattress ads he's been regularly issued after an errant click of an ad on Facebook. There's even a Sattva showroom he often walks past in real life, noting that for some brands, a retail location is as much an advertising expense as it is a point of sale. If one could have attached a tracking pixel to every engagement Tom had with Sattva, there likely would have been 7 to 8 channels that connected with him. The issue is, all of them are either weighted equally or heavily biased to the one that happened just before his purchase. But the most time he intimately spent with Sattva, the interaction that he most attributes to sparking his interest in doing research that led to the actual purchase, was Sattva running ads on Ologies with Ali Ward. An excellent podcast, by the way. Tom says that in his article, but that's me, Gavin, inserting that narrative as well. I've listened to it for years. Back to the actual article. Pixels are great at what they do, but podcasting needs to branch out so its data can reflect what pixels are actually doing and more properly interpret the larger story of a purchase journey. Last week, Wondercraft launched a new feature called Convo Mode, in which a producer can upload a script they've written to Wondercraft Studio, which will then use generative AI to synthesize voices for a podcast-style conversation. Sounds Profitable's Brian Barletta sent Wondercraft founder Oscar Sarander some questions about Convo Mode and what it can do. In his response, Sarander generated an audiogram using Convo Mode with the voices Georgia and Avery to break down how the tool works and how it aims to speed up the creative making process so audio advertising can appeal to brands that are used to the faster turnaround times of other industries. Working in the world of podcast research, Paul Riesmandel reads a lot of news and is going to a lot of events, both of which have been heavily pushing an exaggerated view of YouTube's place in the world of podcasting. Make no mistake, YouTube is an important platform for podcast discovery, and passively on its own is a huge platform outside of podcasting. But data like Signal Hill Insights and Cumulus Media's upcoming spring download find 61% of podcast consumers use a platform other than YouTube most often. The Podcast Landscape 2024 found only 26% of monthly podcast listeners say they use just one app or service for podcasts. So even those who do use a platform like YouTube are not likely to be monogamous to that one platform. In talking about this article with Tom Webster, he provided me a quote I think sums it all up. Quote, "This is a great reminder that YouTube might be the top of the funnel way people discover podcasts, but audio remains the dominant medium." End quote. In the past few weeks, some Amazon ad buyers have been given access to the testing phase of private auction deals, allowing them to buy Prime Video inventory on a dynamic cost basis rather than a fixed CPM. all of which leads to lower cost campaigns, but also fewer guarantees, or any at all. The flexibility and cost saving of running PA campaigns could be of particular interest to smaller and more performance-driven companies. The big trade-off, besides no guaranteed delivery, is private auctions are also at the bottom of the waterfall. So during high-demand periods such as Prime Day, it's likely private auction deals will struggle to be delivered. Still, variable pricing is now on the leaderboard alongside connected TV in the future of advertising that podcasting is competing with. Finally, it's time for my quick hits. These are articles that didn't quite make the cut for full stories in today's episode because it would be incredibly long, and I don't think Gmail would even open it, but they are still worth including in your weekend reading. This week, I have for you. True Native Media is hosting a webinar on July 9th titled Audio First Success: Why Not Every Podcast Needs Video, and Why Advertisers Shouldn't Worry. In attendance will be Heather Osgood, founder of True Native Media, Sounds Profitable's Brian Barletta, and Acast Creative Studios VP Emily Rudder. Mondo Metrics has announced a strategic partnership with Precise AI, an announcement that includes the introduction of Mondo AQ, a solution that combines first-party data collaboration with contextual and behavioral intelligence. The Published Press takes a look at the Creators Caucus, a bipartisan project bringing several popular YouTubers and Twitch streamers together to meet with lawmakers to educate them on the needs of small business content creators and influence relevant legislation. The Davie Awards and the Podglomerate have teamed up to publish a new report titled Video Podcast Decoded, a guide for small shows, featuring experts giving tips on incorporating video into audio-first podcast production. Acast has published a new case study covering a branded video podcast produced to boost brand awareness of the Euro Millions transnational lottery in the UK, and OSHA has a new article detailing how they teamed up with BBC Studios to use a focused podcast search optimization strategy to fast-track the podcast The Infinite Monkey Cage up podcasting charts in just under 2 months. That was the download recap brought to you by Sounds Profitable. I know I went through this week's stories fast, so be sure to check the link in the show notes for every article mentioned. You can also go to the download section of soundsprofitable.com. I'm Gavin Gaddis. Our producers are myself, Brian Barletta, and Tom Webster. And I want to give a special thanks, as usual, to you for sticking with me as I brought you all the top stories you might have missed from this past week. See you on Monday. Robot.
Download complete.